So I'm Marika Visser, and I work for ALA's Office for Information Technology Policy here in the DC office, in the Washington office. And I will do the logistics, and then we'll get started. We have a lot of ground to cover today. So you all are on mute, and you'll stay on mute throughout the session. Post your questions in the chat box, and please address them to everyone. Don't address them to a particular speaker. We have some chat monitors who are going to be gathering your questions and saving them for the Q&A at the end. If it's a quick question, one of them will answer it right away, but most of the questions we'll keep towards the end, please. Okay? And I know you all have found the chat feature because there's a lot going on, introducing yourselves and everything. If you have any questions about whether you're hearing or things like that, also put that in the chat feature. The meeting will be, or it is being recorded, and it will be posted on the Ready to Code website afterwards, so you can go back and review it or share it with colleagues who were unable to join us today. Okay, next question, or next slide, please. So the session facilitators today make up the Ready to Code team and myself, and then we have Nikki Rigg, who is with Google CS Education, and Linda Braun, who shows up as YALSA here. She's our YALSA consultant, and Mega Subramanian, who serves as the ALA Ready to Code Fellow. So you'll be hearing from all of us throughout the session. Next slide, please. So this is what we'll cover today. I'll let you read that, but I did want to remind you that the Q&A is going to be at the end of the session. So please put your questions in as you have them, but we'll answer them at the end of the session. Okay, next slide. So we wanted to start out and give you, as much as we could in this short amount of time, a good, strong understanding of what is Ready to Code. And you can see here on the slide that we are really thinking about it as a mindset. So it's a way of thinking about how you design and implement the services for children and youth in your library or through your library. So I would like to emphasize that this slide in and of itself is really important, and that it's kind of the underpinning of what phase 3 is all about. So as you familiarize yourself with the materials on the Ready to Code website, and you think about the program that you'll be submitting for the application, go back and refer to this slide a number of times as you put all of your information together. So, and make sure that you also are referring to the Ready to Code concepts, which are here in the bullet points, but refer back to them in the RFP that is posted on the website. And also, please make sure that you read carefully the eligibility and selection process. It's a one sheet also available on the website, and together that material will help you be able to reflect how these different bullet points are incorporated into your application. And I'd like to emphasize that we're really hoping that your programs will emphasize how you're connecting with youth interests in the community. So what is important to the youth that you serve in the community, and how can you develop a program that addresses those interests and really brings them forward in your program? Related, we're very interested in looking at how you're connecting to specific needs in your community. I know you all know this, but every community is different, and every library develops its programs depending on the needs that rise to the top of the community. And so the Ready to Code concepts really focus on those things. How are you addressing those in your programming? We also talk a lot about different frameworks for designing programs, connected learning, and design thinking. Those are all very valuable as to how you might put a frame around the program that you're designing. And then we are also looking at how librarians and library staff facilitate learning. So it may not be that you are an expert coder, and in many instances you very well may not be, but that we believe that Ready to Code libraries and Ready to Code library staff can facilitate these rich learning programs. So we're very interested in seeing how you will be addressing that in your application as well. And then also thinking about the role of the community in your programming is a very important Ready to Code concept. So how do you engage with your community? And these are all things that you should be looking at as you're designing your application. And again, remember there's more information about them on the Ready to Code website. Next slide, please.
Hi, my name is Nikki Rigg. I am a program manager on Google's computer science education team. And I'm here to give just a little bit of context about why Google's involved in this work and why we're sponsoring the Ready to Code initiatives, just to help you with your application as you think through how you're positioning the work that you do in your programs. So the Ready to Code concepts that Marika just described were developed through this collaboration with OITP and Google. And the perspective that we take in why we support the mission of libraries is really twofold. So first, I'll start with the business and economic imperative. We know from our internal research at Google that including diverse perspectives on a team is the way to make your end result, your products, most innovative. And the products and solutions that work for today, we know aren't going to work for tomorrow. So we really want to encourage and expand, including a diversity of people into computer science and computational thinking to drive our future businesses and economy. But we also know that coding isn't just about working at Google or creating a startup. CS is used in nearly every industry now, from healthcare to banking and advanced manufacturing, even arts. And a background in these skills can really open doors to really good jobs. We also know that CS is more than coding, and this is why Ready to Code focuses also on computational thinking. It's a way of solving problems, and libraries have always been at the center of ensuring our young people grow up to be critical thinkers. There's also a larger purpose to this work and why we're supporting American Library Association and Ready to Code. It's because we believe that everybody should have at least a basic understanding of computer science and develop computational thinking skills for a couple of reasons. When only a small portion of the population is developing and creating the solutions that are becoming more and more integral to our society or understanding how these products work, it then becomes a social imperative that we make sure that access to these skills is equitable. And being exposed to computational thinking, seeing yourself becoming a computer scientist and then deciding to or not, and having access to good paying jobs is currently not equitable. So across all the work our team does, we look at who doesn't have access currently to these skills and resources, and we try and right those inequities. So with these perspectives in mind, we went to Annual a few years ago, met with OITP, and the collaboration with Marika really started with a simple question. What do you know about coding programs in libraries for K-12 youth? This precipitated phase one, that was a landscape of what was happening currently in libraries across the country with regards to computer science and computational thinking. I see some questions on the chat about what is computational thinking and computer science. Go to the Ready to Code website and the RFP for those definitions there. So out of phase one, out of this landscape, came the Ready to Code concepts that Marika just explained. The findings in phase one also suggested that one way to address the skills gap to be to infuse LIS curricula for youth programs with Ready to Code concepts. So that was phase two. And through which we're now supporting 6 faculty representing LIS schools, iSchools, and schools of education with a specialty in school librarianship. in redesigning their media technology courses from these institutions to embed the Ready to Code concepts in. So you can find out both of these, find out more about phase 1 and phase 2 on our website. But let's focus on phase 3, which is what we're here today, which we also found in that initial landscape research, that in order to effectively implement CS or CT education programs in the libraries, they need funding, expertise, professional development, and data to inform their ongoing work. So this brings us to phase 3. Next slide. The current opportunity now is what we're here to talk about today. And I'll just start by saying that this is not your typical grant program. The objective isn't to fund the well-deserving programs that will apply, because we know that every single application is going to fit this. What we want to do is create a resource that will enable any library, regardless of the CS expertise that they have on staff or the size of their budget, to offer a CS or CT program for your young patrons. We have 2 main objectives in how we've designed this program in order to achieve this goal. First, we want to create and design a toolkit. And this toolkit will enable every single library that would like to implement a free computer science computational thinking program. And this toolkit will have 2 parts. It will be the free resources, the tangible resources that you can use, like curriculum and activities, but there'll also be an implementation guide. And this is really where the leadership expertise of the applicants is going to be important. And from these learnings, we'll be able to develop this implementation guide to customize, or to show how other libraries are customizing these resources. For example, are you a small rural library? Do you have different challenges than a large urban library? Do you have a limited number of computers? Do you prefer offline activities? So because of the variety of communities that you all serve and the context you're operating in, we don't want to necessarily dictate what is in that toolkit and how it'll be used, because we know that the expertise lies with you and you know what's working best for your libraries and your patrons. That's our second objective, is to build this cohort of leaders that can share their expertise, develop and test the toolkit, and be ambassadors for the Ready to Code program for your peers around the country. This means that there will be a lot of feedback and rapid iteration, implementation of that feedback to collect more. So at the end of the program, we'll have a resource for libraries that was developed by libraries. Marika is now going to walk through some of the suggestions we have on how to write a successful application, so that we really understand your leadership and your expertise as part of the program.
Sure. Thank you, Nikki. Okay. And so I want to reiterate that you can find more information, if you haven't had a chance yet, on the Ready to Code website. On the homepage, on the front page, all of these resources that we're referencing are listed there and linked. So please take the time to review those as you put together your application. So you can see on the slide what it is that the reviewers will be looking for. And this is really where you should spend your time if you don't already have that idea, is that we're really looking at as to how you integrate the Ready to Code concept. So you should go back and familiarize yourself with what they are around facilitated learning and community engagement, and bringing in youth voice, and looking at a framework like connected learning or design thinking with which to wrap your program around. And again, those are described in the RFP and in the eligibility and criteria document that we have there. So I think basically there's maybe 3 buckets in addition to all of these kinds of things that are bulleted that the reviewers will be looking for. The basic eligibility, whether it's school and public libraries, and whether you're in the US, and there's a series of others that you should pay attention to. The reviewers will be looking for how you integrate those Ready to Code concepts, and which ones you're focusing on, and how they shine through your program that you're submitting. We're also looking at, there are some selection preferences that the reviewers will be looking at, and these include making up a diverse cohort. So to the extent possible, looking across library types, small, rural, suburban, urban, school and public, I mentioned already, and geographical diversity to the extent that we can do that. And additionally, thinking about how your program addresses the needs of diverse children and youth. We're very interested in understanding more about how libraries serve those different populations. So some other things that the reviewers will be looking at is, and I think Nikki mentioned this previously, is how your program could be replicated in other libraries similar to your situation. We're looking to scale what we learn from phase 3 so that any library that chooses to could develop a similar program. And that we're also looking at the capacity of your library and the lead staff who will be participating and part of the program. So we're looking at the capacity to implement the program that you propose. Next slide, please. And so to build on that a little bit, I'm sure that people are interested in how the awardees will be selected. So just to point out that the makeup of the selection committee, you can see here on the slide. But the youth divisions are at the moment looking for representatives to appoint to the selection committee, and there'll be 2 representatives from our office, the Office for Information Technology Policy. One will be a voting representative and one will just be a liaison. So the review committee will be oriented to a scoring rubric that is very much based on the criteria and eligibility as laid out in the RFP and in that short document that you can use as a reference. We will be having an orientation session with the selection committee so that they are also very familiar with the Ready to Code concept. And I think I've covered most of those things. But again, after the session, please go back and review the slides that talk about the strong application and the slides that talk about the Ready to Code concept. Okay, next slide, please.
Great. So I know this is a quick timeline, so we really want to make sure that everyone understands when the deadlines are, what the participation is like, and what your expectations may be along the way, so that you know what the commitment will be. So the cohort that is chosen will be asked to devote a significant amount of time to this program. So we want to make sure that that's clear. After the applications are shut off on August 31st, notifications for the applications will be made in mid-October. You'll know if you're accepted or not. And then November, February will be a time for the cohort that is selected where you must be running a CS or CT program at your library. This is really critical because this is where we're going to be piloting resources. We're going to be getting your feedback on whether those resources are helpful or not. And we really want to be learning from you about what you're learning as you run your program and what else needs to be included in this toolkit. So that's a really core expectation that you should be aware of when you apply for the program, is you need to be running a program during that time. We'll have some initial feedback and recommendations of what should be in that toolkit that we'll present to the cohort for feedback in February at midwinter, so that we can continue to iterate on what that final toolkit will be, which we are aiming to release for National Library Week next year in April. So don't fear if you're not a part of that initial cohort. You won't have to wait long for these resources to come out and use in your own library. So for the cohort that is participating, your programs should run again through September so we can get additional feedback on that final toolkit. kit when all of the grant requirements will wrap up and final reports due in October. So I know this is high level and vague, but when you are given an offer to participate in the program, there'll be more details on time commitments and schedules, and you can ask more in-depth questions there in order to formally accept that you can contribute to the time commitments and know what you're getting into.
Okay, so now we're ahead of schedule, which is good because I see that in the chat there are a lot of questions. And as I said, we have some chat monitors who are helping to funnel the questions to the right person to answer. And we'll try to get to all of them. Again, this is being recorded and will be posted. So I am going to go ahead and start with some of the questions geared towards me. And then maybe we can, Nikki, you and I can go back and forth. So the first question that I'm seeing is, can we and should we list more than one program leader in the application? And I don't know about should. There's a question for you to fill out, who is the main point of contact. So there's that, but I think in your program description, if you feel that it would be useful for the reviewers to understand how other people will be incorporated into the running of the program, I would say that you could put it in that part of the application. Oh, do you want to add to that, Nikki? No? Okay. The next question is, if we are not ALA members, are we automatically disqualified? No. Current ALA members do have a slight preference when it comes down to selecting between two really similar and equally meritorious applications. But no, you don't have to be an ALA member. When do you need to be running the program? And so I think that may be, when does it start? So applicants or selected libraries will be notified in the middle of October. And then we are asking that you are prepared to have your program up and running in November. And it's also listed on the timeline slide if you want to go back to that. And then I'm not sure if the question also refers to how long, but approximately a year. So through next September 2018 is the length of time.
Yeah, and I'll just to clarify, it doesn't have to be a year-long continuous program. We are looking for different types of program models that fit different community and library needs. So it could be a series that starts repeats itself. It could be a wide variety of program models. It doesn't have to be that full year-long program model.
Okay. So next question that I have, and then maybe I'll shift it so I don't take up all the time with my questions. So does the grant need to be for the full amount, or could it be lower? So the maximum that we'll be awarding is $25,000, but it can be from, well, probably not zero, but from 0 to 25,000. And your budget should match the amount that you are requesting. So be thoughtful about what it is that you're requesting funding for. The reviewers will be looking at how well those line up. Nikki, do you want to add anything about that?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I will take a question. It says, would a data analytics visualization program fit within computational thinking? So in the RFP, there are definitions of computational thinking and computer science. So I really encourage everyone to refer back to those. For computer science specifically, we follow the Computer Science Teachers Association definition. So look for that in that RFP, and we'll have all the links for you at the end, but they're linked on the main Ready to Code website where you registered for the webinar. For data analytics visualization, I'd say it depends on whether or not the lessons are designed to integrate the Ready to Code concepts and computational thinking concepts. But yes, they would be eligible if they include CT or CS, for example, if there's a programming element. If you're just using software to create charts and graphs, that isn't computer science. And maybe I'll take one more from me. See, the application asks about past experience with makerspaces, CT, or being a part of a coding making program. Does this exclude newbies in these areas? Not necessarily, but what we are looking for, again, it's the scoring rubric will be directly tied to the eligibility and selection section of that RFP. So we're looking for demonstration that you are going to run a program that is integrating those Ready to Code concepts, and that you are, your program and you as a leader in the library space should be the one that's contributing to this national effort to design this toolkit. So please apply, demonstrate how you've used these concepts maybe in other programs that you have run in the past, and that you are ready to demonstrate your leadership in applying these to computer science and computational thinking.
Okay, so I'll take a couple more. How many grants will be given? Between 25 and 50. It's going to depend on the budgets of each application. So somewhere in that range. Oh, a related question, sorry. So your goal is to develop 25 to 50 different programs, outline the steps to create, run those programs, test the programs for scalability, and share the steps and instructions with others. I think the answer to that is yes. That is a pretty good summary of what we're looking for. Is there a target number of youth to be served by a program? No, I don't think so. That is completely dependent on your situation, your community, the needs of the youth that you serve. It should be described in the narrative boxes in your application when you talk about the program design. And I guess a similar question to that is, would you prefer a broad age group or a smaller age group that the program serves? I think that also is an answer that you all will know best when you think about the youth that you serve, right? So in the narrative, the way you describe your program, and as you think about incorporating the Ready to Code concepts, I think that answer will come to you about whether you want to focus on, 3rd through 5th grade girls or some other subgroup or population, but that should come clear in how you describe your program.
I could take
there's a bunch of questions. Okay.
Yeah, we have a couple questions about language, and for example, folks that have large Spanish-speaking populations. I'd say that this question's in our FAQ document, so make sure that you refer there as well for an ongoing resource, and we can update with questions if we get any after the webinar. But because of the available resources, and we're not actually creating any new curriculum, we're really looking to curate and cut through the noise of what is already out there and how libraries are using it. The toolkit that we create will be based on what currently exists. We won't be translating any curriculum into Spanish, for example. But this will kind of depend on what the cohort finds useful and what is needed for their libraries. But I will add, though, that the things that we might translate, for example, I have a hunch that we're going to find the need for family outreach and family engagement materials to be in languages other than English. So that's an example of how we are looking for the actual community context and the library expertise to tell us what is needed and available in the toolkit. But that doesn't necessarily preclude say that the resources might not be translated at a later date, but this initial toolkit needs to include resources that are available across the US.
So I have a question that I think a couple people have asked about eligibility. Would a college library system be eligible to apply if the program serves K-12 students in the community? And the answer is yes. Similar question. Our academic library works with youth programs in the community. And so, yes, I think that falls in the same category. These are all really very good questions. And I want to remind you that we do have an FAQ that's going to be a live document. So we started with some questions that had come early on, and we'll add some of the ones here that are, well, almost all of them are, I think, of broad interest. So you can go back and refer to that FAQ as well. So does each awardee create a toolkit for their specific program, or is the set of awardees creating a collaborative toolkit for all of the different programs? And Nikki, I am going to start, but I think this is a question that you may want to weigh in on also. So the answer is the latter, that it's a collaborative toolkit. So the awardees will be starting out with kind of a bare bones toolkit with some resources that will be compiled and shared, and you'll be testing that and using it in the programs and responding to it and giving feedback over the course of the first half of the project. And then in February, share all that feedback, and it'll be iterated into a second version, which will be tested and made live through April. Nikki, you want to add?
No, I think that I'll just emphasize again what I had said earlier, is that the toolkit is really, those basic resources, and then the most interesting part is that collection of expertise and customizations that all of the libraries in the cohort will be able to share about how their peers across the country can use those for greatest impact. You know, we hear again and again, there's plenty of resources out there, but how do you know which ones are the one to go to, first? And there aren't a lot of off-the-shelf programs out there that fit every single need. So this one will, you'll be able to see it, other libraries that are similar to yours, that serve similar populations, and how they've been using these resources for success.
Okay.
I can take the next question. It says, what are the objectives of the grant? States that the implementation guide should be able to be used by libraries regardless of affluence. What are your expectations regarding the use of equipment, computers, material, etc.? So what we're not interested in doing is creating something that is not realistic for majority of libraries to implement because it's too expensive, or they need a lot of expensive equipment in order to do. So this is really where the expertise of the libraries in the cohort will come in how can we adjust for budget sizes or equipment, age, for example, or make something that's platform agnostic, so you don't have to buy specialized software or a particular brand in order to use it. And then also, to adjust for connectivity or device numbers. Are there offline programs as well to engage the youth in these concepts? So we are, on the diversity side, particularly interested in bringing kids into computer science and computational thinking that might not otherwise have access. So we really want to make sure this toolkit can be used by libraries and kids that wouldn't currently maybe have the resources or the mindset to pursue these programs.
And there's actually a question, I think, that might be related to that. So I'll go ahead and answer that one. A couple people have asked what is allowable in the budget, and I know that that's always a big question with a grant program. In this instance, really, you can think about it any reasonable cost to develop and implement and facilitate your program. So that we've had a couple of questions about whether staff time is an allowable expense, and the answer is yes. So think about it as not exactly a blank check, but almost a blank check in that you are designing and implementing and facilitating this program to satisfy the grant, the RFP, and the budget is one tool for you to be able to do that. So but that said, what Nikki was just describing about not spending a ton of money on the tools, that's one thing to consider. And then in your narrative, to be able to really show to the reviewers why this is the budget that you believe that you need to be able to implement this kind of program.
Okay. Someone asked, if you're a complete newbie to coding, how will Google experts help or provide professional development? I can dream big and still create a sustainable program, but worried about attaining the skills to actually teach or run these programs. Great question. We really want to emphasize that the toolkit we create is regardless of the expertise on staff. So we want to make it really easy for libraries that do not have a computer science expert. And there's a lot of programs out there. I'll mention Google has a free CS First program that really is that entry-level beginning coding club that can run for, I think there's 8 modules. Each module is, a week or, depending on how you run it, standalone club. And the facilitator does not have to have any coding experience to be able to do this. So what we want to do is set the librarians and the library staff up for success in facilitating a program and being the expert in facilitation, not necessarily the content, which is what you all already do across quite a wide variety of programs.
I see some similar questions, so I think we might have answered them, but I'll suggest that we will put some toolkit specific questions in the FAQ so you can refer back to that. And because I think we've answered, but there's another question up about whether the toolkit is in cohort or not. And I think that the answer is that it's a group iteration of the toolkit, but each person's experience in each program will provide different kind of input to it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, and remember the toolkit is 2 parts. It's the actual resources, and then it's also all of the information that we learn and that implementation data and those best practices that we learned from the cohort and using those resources. Related to that, we had a question, if you don't get a grant, can you participate in the development? Probably not, because the grant is to participate in the development of the toolkit. But when it comes out in next April, I'm sure we can include a way to get feedback and collect stories about how people are using it then.
So there's a couple of questions that I have related to the actual application process. So if you're experiencing an issue with the application, there's a place on the website where you can submit a question, email a question, and we'll get that. One specific was that after having saved the application, the person got a message that they would have 1 week to finish. And we did look into that, and everyone will have 45 days to complete it. But if you do get an application issue question, please send that to us right away so we can look into it.
Yeah, and I would just
kind
say,
of related.
I would just add, just to mitigate any technology issues, you can always just answer your questions in a document and then copy and paste it into the application later, so you don't lose your answers just in case there's a glitch.
Yeah, very smart. Because if it were me, I would be having that glitch. So another related question: the application really limits the amount of information we can supply. Are we supposed to speak in generalities, as specific info would require more space? So it's hard to be specific and concise. That is a challenge, but I think that the reviewers need to have a really clear understanding of those basic buckets. How you are addressing and incorporating the ready-to-code concepts into your program is kind of tantamount there. And the way that you describe your budget, I think, is also going to be very useful. So specifics, I think, are better in that the reviewers really need to understand the nature of your program. However, there's a related question about describing the software and hardware and things like that, and the names of the community partners. So I think if you are partnering with Boys and Girls Club, that say we're partnering with Boys and Girls Club, if I'm reading the question correctly, I don't think we need contact names and things like that. And then as far as software, hardware, unless you think that it's relevant for the budget, or if it helps you describe your program. But Nikki, maybe you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, if it's specific to describing your program and what you're doing, then yeah, I think we'd like to know about it so we can make an evaluation, or the ALA committee, I should say, can make an evaluation of what you're doing. That we really need to understand the program that you're implementing to be able to make a judgment on if your program can be replicated by other organizations or other libraries. But yeah, to Marika's point, other than the names of the hardware and stuff, that doesn't necessarily need to be put into the budget.
And then there are a couple of eligibility questions that are just showing up. So may school libraries participate? Absolutely. It's for school, public, tribal libraries, and that we would like to see a well-rounded cohort. So that's representational of the libraries out there. Can libraries oh, go ahead. No? Okay. Can libraries collaborate? If I'm understanding what that question is, can libraries in different systems work together on that? And I think before I answer that, I'd actually like to reflect on it. If it's libraries in the same system, then I think that by all means, the more capacity, the better.
Yeah, and it's all, we're looking for to understand the judgment and leadership of the applicants. So I would put that back on the applications as well. And if you are, and make the case of why you think this is something that other libraries should be able to replicate. And then the committee will judge it based on that.
Right, thank you. Do K-12 libraries have to collaborate with the local public library? No. So yes, library, they can, but they don't have to. Sorry,
I can take
Maybe you want to take a question while I read this one?
Yeah. Let's see. I just had it. Libraries typically plan more than a quarter ahead of programs. I planning to run the current CS first starting in January. Would this fit the timeline? No. So we do need programs running July through April in order to be testing these programs. if the only way you can run a program is by getting this grant, I understand that makes it difficult, but we want to see libraries that are doing this work or planning on doing this work, within that timeline. So regardless of whether you get the grant or not, so that will be a restriction there.
Okay, so I think I read through the second part of that K-12 public library question. And if I'm understanding this part right, there's a suggestion that school libraries can roll out the program to the students that they serve, but if the school library has a compelling and relevant way of partnering with the public library, then that should be called out in the application. And can the whole school district participate? All the school libraries in that school district, yes, they could absolutely participate together.
Well, except that we're not looking for 20, for example, staff from that district participating in the cohort. We're looking for an application and a lead, and that lead should be the person on the ground implementing a program, because we are looking to get as close as possible to the learnings that are actually happening on the ground. So it's okay if that program is running across the whole district.
Right.
We're looking for one application from one library leader that will participate in the cohort.
Right, thank you, yes. I think, let's see. So this is an interesting question that I think we'll also put in the FAQ, but it's come up in a couple different ways, but I think they're similar questions. Is how can we justify spending grant money on our program if the program is supposed to be replicated in other libraries without any budget? So I think that the way that we would answer that is that that the way that it would be replicated is, yes, that a library would need to have a budget set aside to do a computational thinking coding program. So it's not that you who participate in the grant are receiving funds to design your program, and we're assuming that another library would be able to design the same program without any funds. But that if you, for example, put together a $10,000 application, then another library would be able to look at what you've done and design something similar, but that they would also need a budget for it.
And so a lot of the costs, I would imagine, of running a program are staff time, because you need that library facilitator. So obviously that is going to be going to a budget of a lot of different programs, whether it's reading or computational thinking or any library program, there's that staff time involved. What we don't want is that you have to pay money for a subscription to a program in order to participate in this Ready to Code or benefit from the Ready to Code toolkit later on, because then that has a budget implication for a library down the road. Or if we see an application where the only cost you're proposing is a $25,000 robot, that's not necessarily replicable by other libraries. But to go back to the CS First example, because that's what I'm most familiar with, that curriculum is free, online, anybody can use it. But there may be customizations that libraries are making in order to make it most relevant to their community. So that takes staff time to understand what those customizations are. And we can package that information, so it's a lot easier for other libraries to learn from it than to implement that program and find out those lessons learned on their own over time. They can learn quicker from the peers that will be involved in the cohort, because we'll document those lessons.
And there's been a couple questions about the timeline. Could we go ahead and go back to that slide while we're answering the questions, and then people can kind of look at it, and maybe that will help understand how the time is going to go. Linda? Um,
Muting. I'm sorry, it wouldn't unmute me.
Oh.
Sorry. Can you say that again? Just repeat
Sorry,
that.
Linda, could you please go back to the timeline slide?
Yes, right there. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Okay, so there's a question about the number of youth served in 2016. And some of the libraries I know count that differently. So I think whatever is the most relevant number for you to indicate the kind of the capacity of your library in that area in serving youth. So if you count by program attendance or number of youth that, well, I guess that's the same as program attendance. So however you best indicate in your reporting about the youth that you serve.
Yeah, and maybe I can just go back to the timeline question since we have that up there. You know, I understand that some folks are saying that isn't an easy time to run a program or recruit, or that timing doesn't work for them, and you know, unfortunately, that is just the timing of this program. I think, you know, given the number of libraries across the country and the just sheer amount of expertise that we know you all have, I think we will be able to find a cohort that is running programs during that time. But it is a non-negotiable because the core of this program, you know, remember I said it's not a typical grant program. We're not just providing funding to run a program. We are really looking for that active feedback to co-develop something that can be scaled across any library that wants to use these resources. So we do need a program that is running November through February, and then can iterate on that feedback that we collect and provide in February through April. And then one clarification that to add to that pilot period, November through April, is really to develop the toolkit. After that, then we're implementing the toolkit and getting further feedback from you all. So we do really need those programs to be running November through April, and then through the summer, September, to see the learnings from the final toolkit.
And there's a question about examples of proposals. And what I would say to that is also on the Ready to Code website, in one of the resources links, we have some case studies that we put together based on our phase 1 work, where we did focus groups and interviews with different libraries. And we felt that these were programs that really highlighted how library programs can integrate ready-to-code concepts. So I would recommend that you review those. There's samples from small libraries and larger libraries and individual libraries and library systems, and a school library as well. So I think that that might help give you some guidelines for that. So I have one more question here. And it is, what can the money be spent on besides staff time? And so I think that we will put this, highlight this in the FAQ, but that it really, think about what it is that it takes to put together a successful program. And that's what you can put in your budget. So if you need some marketing funds to reach a specific population or something like that. So think about what it would take to make your program successful. But we'll highlight those kinds of questions in the FAQ.
Another question, are participants required to attend ALA Midwinter in February or annual? No, these are optional. There will be a workshop, particularly in association with Midwinter, for feedback on those initial findings. But we can do, you know, a Hangout or Zoom meeting to include people that aren't able to make it in person.
And I think we're running up on time, so we've stopped taking questions, but there is a way for you to submit a question through the website in the Contact Us. We'll get an email, so feel free to ask questions. And again, if I were going to leave you with some, no, okay, sorry. If I were going to leave you with something, it is to spend time now familiarizing yourself with the RFP and the resources that are on the website. Think about that as you design your proposal. And again, this will be recorded and posted on the website, and we'll be updating the FAQ. Nikki, do you want to add any parting thoughts?
Yeah, if we could just go to the last slide with all of the links, so that's included. Yeah.
So there they are.
Yeah, and we will update the FAQs as more questions come in. So I'll just, my parting thoughts will be to really focus on that FAQ doc when you have questions before you email, because if you've had the question, most likely other people have and it may be there. And then really look at the eligibility criteria and the RFP. As Marika said, there are no surprises. All of the selection criteria is very transparent in the RFP. Of how we will be evaluating and filter, how the ALA will be evaluating and filtering applications. So just really appreciative of everyone for their questions and their interest in the program. Excited to see who the cohort is.
Right, great. So thank you everybody for coming, and we'll look forward to many, many application submissions in the coming months. So thank you all. Bye.